The solitary man walks his dog along a footpath. Up ahead, a shadow slips across the path and disappears under a footbridge. Man and dog pick up the pace and come up on the bridge. Close by lies the body of a young Hispanic girl. Detective Gary Dugan is one of the first to arrive on scene.
Her hands were at her side, and we couldn't quite tell exactly what had killed her at that time.
An ambulance tech at the scene leans in to inspect the girl's body and lifts her sweater.
There was a stab wound in the center of her chest, and further examination revealed that she had a ligature around her neck. And there was hardly any blood coming from the stab wound.
The lack of blood tells Dugan he is most likely looking at a body dump, and that his Jane Doe was actually killed in another location.
I guess we were there probably about 45 minutes when we heard that there was a female at the 23rd precinct reporting that her daughter was missing.
The girl in question is Paola Iera, a 13-year-old who left school earlier that day and had not been heard from for hours. Dugan and his partner, Maria Bertini, grab a photo of the victim and head to East River Landing. Inside an apartment, they find a family of 9, who confirm what detectives already suspect. The body under the bridge is Paola Iera. Iera's body is transported to the medical examiner's office for an official autopsy. The victim suffered 3 stab wounds to the chest and was also strangled. Bruising on the pelvic area indicates a possible sexual assault, most likely with a blunt instrument. No semen is recovered from the victim's body. A single pubic hair, however, is collected. 5 p.m. on September 10th. A fire truck rumbles down 3rd Avenue. The air is hot and thick as smoke, then fire, peeks out from the rooftop landing of a Harlem high-rise. The engine turns into the George Washington housing complex. Firefighters douse the blaze in a matter of minutes. As the smoke clears, they realize what they thought was a rubbish fire is actually a corpse, doused in gasoline and set on fire. In other words, murdered. In a matter of moments, a team of New York detectives arrives on scene.
A response from a Bronx precinct who had a missing person report of a young woman by the name of Johalis Castro.
Castro's family IDs the victim's jewelry, and dental records taken from the body are matched to that of Johalis Castro. Detectives then begin tracking Johalis's movements on the day of her murder. They pull phone records and find a series of calls from Johalis's home in the Bronx to a Cynthia Key in Manhattan's East Harlem neighborhood.
I spoke to Miss Key on the phone. I called up, identified myself. I asked her if, she knew this, this person. She said no. She says, but I have a son who, is about that age. Maybe he might know her. So I asked her what her son's name was, and she told me his name was Aaron Malik Key. And she said he wasn't home at the time. So I left her my name and number, and I said, do me a favor, when he comes in, have him call me.
While Wagner awaits a phone call from Aaron Key, he runs his name for any criminal history and discovers Key had spent time in a correctional facility upstate for robbery. The next day, Key calls Detective Wagner and agrees to come in for a sit-down interview.
When we came in, one of the first remarks that he made was something to the effect of, wow, that's Johalis. What a damn shame. Look how pretty she was. And basically that's where we started.
With no physical evidence linking Key to the crime, Wagner's hands are tied. Johalis Castro, like Paolo Iera before her, is dropped into the cold files. They both stay that way for 1 more year, until another girl meets Aaron Key and quickly finds herself dead. It's 8:30 on a Tuesday morning, and business as usual in the Taft housing projects. The elevators are not working, and a resident on the 16th floor begins the long trek downstairs. In the stairwell of the 15th floor, she stumbles across a woman lying in the middle of the landing. At first, The resident thinks the woman is asleep. Then she discovers the woman is dead. Detectives Mike Ulaco and Scott Wagner respond to the scene.
At the time we found her, we weren't sure exactly what had happened to her. We got the job as an investigative DOA.
She was nude underneath this shirt that was covering her almost like a shroud. It was like it was placed over her face and upper body, but she was nude underneath, no bra, no shirt.
The body is transferred to the medical examiner's office for autopsy, where she is identified as 18-year-old Rashida Washington, a local resident who disappeared the previous night while walking home. The ME determines the cause of death to be asphyxiation, due to compression of the chest and neck. She also notes that Washington was sexually assaulted. A semen sample is detected and lifted from Washington's body. Detectives begin looking for likely sources of the semen, starting with the victim's boyfriend.
We interviewed her boyfriend. We interviewed a lot of people, but there was nobody that was really sticking out as a viable suspect.
6 months into the investigation, the case has no solid leads and seems destined for the cold files. When the science of DNA brings the case into focus and the pieces of murder begin to fall into place. Inside the New York City Medical Examiner's office, forensic scientist Karen Dooling works on evidence kits from unsolved homicides. In January of 1999, she runs semen collected from Rashida Washington's murder into the city's local database and registers a hit. Not to a known offender, but to another unsolved case, a rape victim, one out of East Harlem, ID'd in the system only as Rape Victim 1.
Case from Rape Victim 1 was originally believed to be part of a different pattern. And as it turned out, that case was not part of that rape pattern, but had created a new pattern with homicide victim Rashida Washington and this rape case.
Soon, 3 other unsolved East Harlem rapes are linked to the new pattern. Investigators working the Washington homicide now begin reviewing the rape cases for any possible connection that may lead them to their killer.
The sequence of violence was almost always the same. He would make the girls take off their clothing. He would use an article of their clothing as a gag and a blindfold. There would be oral sodomy, anal sodomy, and vaginal rape. And it would almost always progress in that order.
Composite sketches of the suspect are posted throughout East Harlem, and leads begin to filter in. The best of the lot come from the East River Landing complex, a clutch of buildings located less than a mile from where Rashida Washington's body was found. Residents there tell police they should talk to a man named Ace.
As a result of that information, we search the computers and find out that a man by the name of Aaron Key, who also used the name Aaron Warford, has the nickname of Ace and lives at 420 East 111th Street. And when we get a picture of him, he very eerily resembles the person in the sketch.
Aaron Key is arrested on a charge of petty larceny. The detective grabs 5 styrofoam cups from Key's holding cells. Meanwhile, Key is arraigned on the larceny charge and let out on bail. The DNA belongs to Aaron Key, or his cellmate, who had access to the cups inside the jail cells. The tentative link does not prove the case, but comes awfully close. A warrant is sworn out for Key's arrest, and detectives head out to get their suspect. Samples of Key's hair, blood, and saliva are taken for further analysis. The DNA match to Washington and the rape cases is confirmed. Key's hair is then matched through mitochondrial DNA testing to pubic hair left behind at the scene of Paolo Iera. Key is extradited back to New York, where a guilty verdict seems all but certain. Key is sentenced to life in prison for the murder of Rashida Washington, 25 years to life for the murders of Johannes Castro and Paolo Iera, and 475 years in prison for the 4 rapes.